Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Russ. I'm here wearing a couple hats today. First, as a member of the Advertising Week executive team, I want to offer our welcome to everybody that's been here since Monday. I guess in the last inning of the last game of our series. So welcome and have a great time for the last few hours that we've got going on. We should be joined a bit by the Pitbull Rush. I know he's upstairs right now in the IMAX Theater, and we'll probably fill up the place in a few minutes. And I also wear the hat of a sports franchise owner in being a co-owner in an organization called Taste of Victory Stable. So I'll throw in some perspectives being a franchise owner in a little bit of a different, unique way. But most importantly, we are here today to talk about sports. Sports brings us drama. Sports brings us this creative palette as media brands to tell a story. Sports brings very, very intimate connections for brands and advertisers. And from an investor perspective, I guess you can call sports a field of dreams. So we're here today to bring four very unique and distinctive voices excuse me, for sports present and for sports future to have a conversation on what that means. The session's called Betting on a Winner. We will focus on the betting aspect of wagering, but this is as much to look into the crystal balls of Deirdre, Jeff, and Juan Carlos to get us a bit into where this fascinating and for the most part live experience is going to be going. So that for you in the audience that are working on careers in this space, supporting brands in this space, working in the media in this space, you can help better plot your own personal and professional course. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Deirdre to start to do the introductions and perhaps give us the 30-second headline of something that's going on in your business, or is about to happen, if you want to make some news, or has recently happened,
Sure.
that you want everyone to remember.
Sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Deirdre Lester, CRO at Barstool Sports. Thank you for being here. I love Advertising Week. Obviously, Barstool Sports, if you're not familiar with us, is, in our opinion, the most influential brand for young people today, both men and women. It started primarily as a sports-focused blog, but we've really transcended that and are doing content beyond just sports and now into lifestyle, and we've launched a bunch of female shows and content too. So a little misleading of a name, Barstool Sports, but as it comes to the sports piece, I think the thing that we're kind of leaned into right now and is pretty exciting, and I was talking to Russ yesterday about the name of the panel being Betting on a Winner. We're betting on Sportsbook right now. So Barstool Sports launched at the start of the NFL season just a few weeks ago, Barstool Bets, which is a dedicated website, app, and content engine, as well as a free-to-play betting engine. And that is something that is very much in the forefront of the whole entire sports industry, but for us, it's the direction that we're leading our business, and for a lot of reasons. But one of the things about it that we know is that the fans that love sports and also bet on sports are the most engaged sports fans. So from an advertising perspective, it's a very compelling audience, not only for the betting operators, but also for non-endemic brands.
We're going to come back to that subject many times. Jeff.
Thanks. I'm Jeff Reese. I run Yahoo Sports. I appreciate your coming here. I think the big headline for us over the course of the last few weeks has just been the strength of for the first 3 weeks of the NFL season. That is not a headline, but I think what's interesting is how the consumption of NFL continues to evolve, and I think what this conversation is about, and I think what we spend most of our collective time thinking about, right, is that intersection of how we see consumption and fandom evolving with the way that properties like the NFL continue to kind of drive the engine. So for us, what that means is for example, our live NFL consumption on the Yahoo Sports app is up like 3x this year. We had our biggest influx of new seasonal and fantasy football users all year. So what in several years. So what we're about is really finding that intersection of kind of evolving and unmet needs. You look at the composition of our NFL audience, 60% of it is below the age of 39. So a lot of conversation was going on in the industry a couple of years ago as to whether or not the NFL had a demo problem. I would argue they had a use case problem. The fans that they wanted to talk to didn't want to be sitting in there, not like this fella Patrick in the back who's got a bunch of TVs in his house, but a lot of those fans didn't want to be glued to their home. They didn't want to be glued to a paid TV sub, but they still wanted their football. So what's fun for us is finding those new use cases and starting to deliver real scale around them.
And we want to return to that subject too in terms of growing the audience, or is it taking the existing audience and having them engage more, engage longer, engage deeper? Jeff. Jeff with the J.
Jeff with the J. Yes. So first of all, again, thank you for coming. This has to be the biggest advertising week I've seen, and I think we've been a part of it for six or 7 years. A dirty little secret is that each of us, Deirdre and I work together at Major League Baseball. Jeff and I have done a bunch of deals together, Juan Carlos as well. So we're all friends up here. So whatever banter you see, we'll try to make it entertaining and fun. To your question specifically, what's news and what does our company do? So I joined a company called Delta Tre. It's not always the easiest company to pronounce. It's an Italian-based company. It's been around about 30 years, owned by Bruin Sports Capital and George Pine. And we are a technology company that powers pretty much the back end of just about every major sport in the world. So a ton of European football, baseball, basketball, football, and so on. I think your next question was, what's a piece of news we want to break?
Yeah.
So how about if I break some news that was broken last week? How's that for breaking news?
Good.
Okay, so...
That's what I did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So one of the things we do is we build live video platforms. We'll talk a lot about video, I'm sure, up here today. We also build big publishing tools. So we announced that we took over the technology for Major League Baseball to power all of their, basically 10 work streams for all of their web platforms. So MLB.com, all 30 clubs launched for opening day, and all the minor league baseball clubs and so on will be launching in the off season. So it's not breaking news. It broke last week, but it's news and it's exciting and it's been a lot of fun for us. And
I was going to say one element of that, in terms of your takeaways for the audience, is to be successful going forward, you have to master that, and it's not necessarily something that one thinks about as a franchise, as a media platform. Digital content management and workflow is something that's kind of behind the curtain, but if you don't master it, you're not getting your content out there the way you should. JC.
My name is Juan Carlos Rodriguez. Again, thank you for joining us. A few years ago, Univision made a big bet on the biggest sport on earth, on soccer. And as of today, we deliver more than 80% of all primetime numbers in the industry, regardless of language, here in the US. And what we're doing for the next few months is we're setting up the foundations of what the betting world would be for us. We're putting consistency in our production, finding deals with our data partners in order to gather data. We're getting ready for the legal issues that are coming on the betting world. And most important is, how do we make better use of the technologies, the 5Gs of the world and so forth, so that we can enable all these platforms to be able to serve all these communities that would love to start joining the world of betting in the sport.
So you have PE funding. You've got Verizon Media. You have the Chernin Group. A lot of wallets and pockets in there. How much do they become your bankers essentially and your investors that you have to convince to put money into this? Deirdre, just start with you.
Sure.
How do you convince them to invest in the technology?
Yeah.
Platform?
Chernin Group is the majority owner of Barstool Sports, and they came in about a little over 3 years ago now. I was just talking with them 2 weeks ago. They were in for our most recent board meeting, and I asked them what has surprised them about Barstool Sports, and they laughed and they said their plans for us for 2020 we've already surpassed by 4x. So we don't have to convince them to invest much in us. We're also profitable, so we're one of the few sort of middle-sized digital media properties today that are actually running and operating at a profit. and we're very bottom line focused. We run a really lean operation, I'd say. And so again, for us, we're building things that we believe we can monetize immediately and quickly. It's not to say we're not betting on the future. Barstool Bets is a great example. It's literally brand new, and it's, other than some advertising that we're running there, it's not really highly monetized yet, but the content that we're building is drawing in a lot of sponsorship revenue. So yes, they're great partners as an investor. We're also looking at potential new partners as we look to the next phase and how we scale. We're on pace to surpass $100 million. So suddenly there's a lot of interest from new potential investors in the marketplace. So we're kind of our CEO, and we're going through the whole process of talking to those folks now, and I think we're a very attractive property based on what you're seeing with a lot of other digital media companies today, kind of overcapitalized, unable to realize the original valuations, and you look at us and we're growing and operating with a really strong EBITDA. So,
Jeff, you have the same experience? You have hands-off investors, or you get whatever you need, or you have to make a great business
I
case?
forgot Verizon owned us. I mean, our company is entirely focused and goes to work every day about connecting consumers with their passion points in life and making their lives in those areas better. And when you look for the intersection of technology and passion, I mean, there just aren't very many categories that play the way that sports does, right? We are across the board involved in what I would call kind of fundamental building blocks around just consumers' daily digital lives, whether it be in the form of email or in the form of news and information or finances or certainly sports. So there is no convincing necessary there. And then, to Deirdre's point, our job is to basically say, okay, how do we separate all the things you can do into the things that should do, that create the best experiences, have the greatest room for differentiation, and ultimately translate into the strongest business. So, we have an enormous amount of corporate support for the business, for the category, and just very high expectations as to the role we're going to play in Verizon Media.
Right. Do you get a lot of, I'll say, unsolicited or maybe solicited suggestions on how to have other businesses within the Verizon family kind of bolt onto you or leverage you?
Listen, I think it's not. First of all, it's not an unsolicited thing. I think one of the things that we are better at today than we were a year ago. I mean, we've gone through a lot over the last couple of years, and the fact that we are now Verizon Media, right? We're not some weirdly named thing that has nothing to do with Verizon. Suggests that there is an intense level of interest in figuring out how we can unlock some of the value that the mothership gives. I mean, we are. Juan Carlos spoke, for example, about the advent of 5G. I mean, we are the source of the single largest form of capital investment in the next industrial revolution. So it invites a conversation as to how to apply that to our business, how to know the difference between the science experiment stage of that and how it really translates into the next mainstream experiences. So those are not unwelcome conversations, because those are the things that ultimately help us propel ourselves in the category.
Sure. Jason, you mentioned 80% of soccer, football viewing in the United States is done through your platforms.
Correct.
Are you looking to go to 81 or 91?
We're trying hard every day.
101? I mean,
We're trying hard every
that's a pretty
day, but
amazing stat.
to answer your question, our owners are very sentimental. They only care about generating value. So, so having said this, we know that 2021 and 22 will be a game changer in the media ownership landscape. And for that, we need to be ready to A, try to get as many rights as we can, the sooner the better, and B, be able to be a relevant participant on what that looks like, because it's going to be an incredible game changer with the amount of technological companies jumping into our broadcast arena, and starting 23 is going to be a new landscape and an incredible amount of opportunities, and we're getting ready for that. We're paid to protect the long-term vision of the company.
So I've used an expression a lot: protect the base.
Yep.
Grow the base.
Grow the base.
So is that the idea? And maybe I can go back. Actually, I want to ask Jeff something first, but keep that one in mind. How do you protect the base, but then what's the growth strategy? Jeff, you represent New York's venture capital sports group. Can you describe what that group is, who they're made up of, and how they would answer, how some of your members would answer that question about the role of the investor with the media companies?
Yeah. So NYVC Sports, there's now Boston VC Sports and San Francisco VC Sports. We're actually hosting a panel at 3:30. WWE, NFL, FIFA, Juventus, several others will be on that segment. So it'll be right here on this stage in a few hours. So a little plug for sticking around. But we created the group. I worked at USTA and then startup and then Major League Baseball. I've been on the consulting side. And now I'm on sort of the corporate entrepreneur side. And when we looked at the triangle of investors, entrepreneurs, and sports, call it established business, so broadcasters, brands, publishers, agencies, leagues, teams, et cetera, what was happening was, and again, this is 8 years ago, and the skate to where the puck is going, right? The puck has definitely gone in that direction. So at that time, there was almost no exits in sports. Pretty much all entrepreneurialism was thinking about how do I think about live, but not necessarily how do I generate value in sport. And so we've tried to bring together all the entrepreneurs who are trying to generate revenue or generate investment from investors that leagues care about, because the money that flows from investors to entrepreneurs ultimately ends up on rights buying. We've got 3 media companies here who have all, I think, been on a panel at one point or another. And so the goal is to bring those 3 communities together, and we host a ton of events. And really the goal is if you can bring the entrepreneurs, the investors, and the sports executives together, more deal flow and more things get done. But to your question that each of these guys got to answer and I didn't get to answer about for investors, I'm gonna jump in and throw a plug to mine as well. I know where bread is buttered. So I strongly believe that people do deals with people and relationships matter. And while Delta Trey is a 30-year business that started with stopwatches at Formula One races, our investor, Bruin Sports Capital, George Pine used to run NASCAR, and after that IMG, and much of the stuff that we do that supports the 3 guys up here are driven by relationships. And so as we've started as a European company and now been in the US for about 2 years, the investment, the relationships, and the support is a huge growth opportunity.
Yeah. Protect the base. Deirdre, can you define the base, if you have one, for Barstool?
Sure.
And what you're doing to grow or extend that base?
Sure. You know, a lot of people who are just becoming familiarized with Barstool would think of us as like the David and the Goliath situation and the startup in the sports industry from a media perspective. But really, the company started in 2003 in Boston as a newspaper. It's been around a long time. It very quickly evolved into a blog, and now we have the 6th largest podcast network in the country. We're reaching over 65 million unique visitors, according to Nielsen, and that's not inclusive of our Sirius radio channel or our Snapchat audience, which is a top performing, 2 top performing shows on Discover. So our audience is very large, but there is a base. There is that base of what we call the quote unquote stoolies that have been with us a very long time, have been following Barstool from the beginning. They're biggest champions of our brand, and we want to super serve them. You know, we launched a 9-city amateur golf tournament this year, and we only made the tickets to enter that tournament available to our paid subscription, like premium audience, and we sold it out within hours. So we are creating experiences for our base that allow them to get closer to the brand, closer to the talent, and really feel like they're part of the narrative that is Barstool Sports. And then at the same time, like I said when I started out, we're also now reaching out to new audiences. We're reaching out to college students. We have a network of over 350 students who are in colleges all over the country, and they're running the Barstool handles for those schools. So Barstool Cuse and Barstool Blue for Michigan, and you know, there's this one for every major school. And so we're out there making sure that the next generation are in love with our brand, are fans with our brand, are wearing our merch, are flying our flags. You know, Barstool is very much.
Your Dan Wagon t-shirts hit. Like,
Yeah.
within hours.
Yeah, we got some calls from
was gonna say, how do you
some
manage?
agents last night about Danny Dimes, but Yeah, no, I mean, it's a big part of it too is how do we keep our fans engaged? It's not just come read us or come listen to or watch, but it's represent. Be a fan of the brand in the way you would, your Premier League team or your Major League Baseball team. And that's been really powerful for us. And outside of leagues and teams, you don't see a lot of media brands that have people walking around wearing their cap or wearing their shirt. If somebody's walking around town today wearing a Facebook shirt, they either work there or they got it for free because they're a client. Nobody's like running out, like, I gotta have a t-shirt that says Snapchat or Facebook. So that's something that we hold very near and dear, and it's something that we nurture and protect and try to grow and expand upon.
Jeff, how about you? Define the base, and how do you look to grow it?
Our biggest base that we think about are our gamers. There are 12 million people playing different kinds of games on Yahoo Sports. The core of the core being season-long fantasy football players. So the way we look at it is to say we want to basically be working all ends of that continuum. We want to be able to move a subset of those guys into even more premium experiences around DFS or products like Best Ball, because a subset of them are interested in kind of taking that next level and starting to consider paid money gaming. And then we want to continue to grow that environment through a series of free games and content initiatives. And we really saw that strategy pay out this year when I said we added more new users to the season-long fantasy football environment than we ever had before. And we did that in part through a combination. Season-long fantasy is a category that is relatively mature. It's probably seeing a 3 to 5% CAGR, right? So growth is going to come to some degrees through expansion of a category, but it's going to come through share stealing. And we saw evidence of some real share stealing from our friends at ESPN this year in particular. And that was immensely satisfying because it felt like that ecosystem that we're building around the gamer between news and information, low friction contests, premium contests, and then continuing to deepen our investment in the season-long experiences is paying off.
Tell them about the live video in the Yahoo Fantasy app.
Well, it helped that we added we added NFL Live Video. Thanks, Jeff. We added NFL Live Video to the Fantasy app this year, but given the nature of the way our relationship with the NFL works, we actually weren't allowed to promote that.
Oh, so
very
I
aggressively.
promoted it.
So I don't think you're in violation of our
Right.
agreement.
No, I'm cool. I signed nothing.
And I do. I want to tag on to something that Deirdre was talking about, because I'm talking about the merch side. And it is one of the things that I've been most impressed about with Barstool. I actually ran licensing at ESPN for a couple of years. And we had a lot of meetings that were just like, come on, we should,
Remember the phone, Jeff?
That was not mine.
ESPN
That was,
phone?
Deirdre, that was not
I
mine.
have one.
You have
Oh,
one?
In my basement,
that's worth
somewhere in
something.
Tupperware. Or in,
It's like worth
plastic.
nothing, but it's worth something.
I've got it. Yep.
Another time, that would be a great conversation all by itself. But the point being is, even that brand with its reach was not able to engender the level of kind of brand passion that you all have. And it is something you guys deserve a ton of credit for, because it is a very real thing.
Jeff,
So
you wanna
David,
jump in on this?
yeah, I guess we're going on the line. Yeah, absolutely. Just cut me off.
Just go.
David Stern at a breakfast this morning said the way to create true value in a sport, and I think he obviously was talking about his experience in basketball, but the way to create true value is not to convince someone to watch a basketball game, to convince someone to watch sports. It's to take your core fan and make them watch more games, and for longer. And that's how you create real engagement. That's how you create real experiences. And that's where things like we talk about in these environments as sports executives, will these rights in 2021, which just about every major sports league and certainly the US and other markets as well, are going to become available, and what channel is it on, and when do you watch it, and where do you watch it? And to most people, I would venture to guess, to most people in this room, there really isn't a distinction. I want to watch this live sporting event because I care about this team or this league, and I'm going to watch it maybe live or maybe not, probably live, but maybe not, on my device, on my own schedule. And I don't really care if it's linear or digital or sold or carved up. Just this is how I'm going to watch it on my Apple TV, so who's giving it to me and allow me to watch it? So we are super keenly focused on providing amazing experiences, whatever the content is. You've got 3 amazing content companies up here, and we try to build great experiences to allow people, however they want to watch that content, to be able to.
JC, give us an example of, what is the base? What do you consider your base? And then some things you're doing to extend and expand?
So for us, it's very, very focused, which would be we are fan-centric towards our audience, and we're advertising-centric. We do whatever it takes to try to merge that world, and we do it by having very good rights, a lot of technology that help us enable both on-screen and behind the screen. And the third party that we invest a lot of money is on talent, both on-screen and outside the screen. At Univision, we have become like the place in which you could have the best of NFL from CBS, ESPN, NBC together in terms of talent. So we invest a lot into that. And for us, it's a balancing act. Data has become the most relevant currency for many reasons. We need to start playing with that in order to better know our audience, but more important, in order to start putting some odds into data.
Right.
So he doesn't know,
Wagering
but
odds.
we're gonna become very good friends or closer friends in the near future.
Better friends.
Better
I'm
friends,
in.
yeah.
I'm in.
So that's what we do. That's the way we're foreseeing expanding the base.
So let's jump into data a little bit. I received an email last night, I think, from the New York Racing Association, given my racing connection, and it said, Dear Russ, starting next week, you will no longer be getting a live feed of our high def feed unless you open up a wagering account, which is like, it's chicken and the egg, I guess, a little bit. I like the data. The feed's a data point for me as both an owner in the industry as also a handicapper. But let's talk a little bit about where data fits in. Let's say from a wagering and gaming perspective. The more data you have, the smarter you are. Is that the razor or the razor blade, and how does that work from a consumer perspective?
Well, I mean, data first and foremost is, and I think we obviously have to be super sensitive about how data is stored, how it's collected, how it's shared, how it's all that stuff, right? But data at its core is a way of being able to drive an optimized and personalized experience, right? It's a way of being able to say, of the gazillion things that we could share with you at this given moment, this is what we understand being the things that are going to drive you to the deepest and most immediate form of consumption. So when we're talking about data, what we're really talking about is optimizing personalization, being able to provide the best experience. Because the fact of the matter is that if you walked into the same bar every night for 7 years, right, and ordered the same drink every night, and you walked into the bartenders treated you like a stranger, you'd feel like, what the hell's going on here, right? There's something wrong. Right. So data presents an opportunity for us to deliver highly customized experiences to folks that do exactly what Jeff was talking about, which is deepen that level of engagement and deepen the level of commitment they have to the brand.
Mm-hmm. JC, any investments you're making in data?
Yeah, I would split it in two parts. One is data collection from our audience, which is very important, and these gentlemen are the kings of that. But most important for us is there are 2,500 events with a soccer ball in every match, and that turns into more than 15 million data points every match. So when you add artificial intelligence to 20 million data points and you sum that into all of the games, then the amount of information that you have in order to make accurate positions at this point would enable people to start having more information and making better decisions.
In your world, are you driving the use of wearables, or is it the leagues? Who seems to be more innovative?
It's an incredible combination.
Yeah.
It all depends. In the U.S. leagues, they are all controlled by the leagues. Outside of the U.S. leagues, they are controlled by broadcasters. So that makes it a very appealing opportunity for all of us.
There's some real innovation there.
Yeah.
Deirdre, how about you?
Yeah, so we're probably the least sophisticated on the data front of the folks on this panel. But that said, like it's very powerful, right? Data on so many levels for us. And when I joined Barstool just under 2 years ago, shortly after I was hired, we hired our CMO, Brett Kovacs, and he came into his first executive meeting and was like, he came from BuzzFeed. He was like, I can't wait to get my hands on the data. And we all laughed out loud. And we're like, there's no data, like literally none. And now 2 years later, we've hired on the product side, we have data analytics side sitting in the front row. We have our new marketing analytics person who just joined us from Fullscreen. So we're making an investment in being able to mine data, both on the audience side, on the technology side, on the gambling and betting front, to be able to go to marketers and share more deep analytics about who our audience is and how they can uniquely engage them with their brands. So we're pretty early on in the data phase, but I think it's really driving our business forward. And one of the most real kind of like tangible examples I can use is like I mentioned our podcast network. Podcasting right now is like it's the darling. I've heard that Adweek has been a lot of talk about podcasting this week, but it's a very Wild West medium. There's it's fueled primarily today by direct response advertising, which is good actually because it means that it's actually driving real performance. So now the big brand marketers want to come in and understand it. And we're putting together an upfront model for next year. And instead of just pricing it on the audience that we have today, we're actually able to now look back at from a data and analytics perspective and extrapolate how much how much growth are we seeing organically and what can we expect to have in Q1 through Q4 next year and price our audiences accordingly. And that's meaningful from a revenue perspective for our business to be able to do that. And so just like it sounds very simple, but across the board, it's really moving the needle for us to have access to data and to leverage it across, with our internally and also with our partners.
Can we reflect a little bit? You mentioned analytics. Jeff, with Yahoo, social media. Let's dive into this whole world of social, and I want to get to a couple of the elephants in the room. So social can be a blessing and a curse. I think it's a place where people want to be loved. It's a place where there's a lot of hate as well, and everything in between. How have you at Yahoo Sports started to engage social? What have you learned from it, and how are you tweaking it to make it a healthy place?
We were late to social as a brand, as a company outside of HuffPo. Most of our properties did not move as aggressively into social as we should have. So we were starting from a relatively weak position from an audience perspective. So what we've primarily used social for is, as much as anything, is a science lab. Where we've been experimenting with new formats. It's one of the really cool things we've been able to do at Yahoo over the course of the last year is we've dramatically changed the composition and look of our consumer-facing talent. Yahoo Sports' legacy was largely built as a collection of phenomenal sports writers. We want to build on that legacy, but going forward, we want to be much more about bringing in voices and perspectives that look a lot more like our audience and talks more like our audience. And social has been a phenomenal proving ground for us to develop new personalities, new formats, and that's what I'm most interested in. So right now, there's a little bit of a disconnect between voice and positioning, what you'd see on our core properties and what you see on social. And I think what you'll see as we get into 2020 is shrinking of that delta, and we start to take some of the successful trials we've built on social and incorporate them into the O&O.
About how many people do you have that manage that day to day these days?
There are about 10 people working on it, but then there are a bunch of personalities that we're working on there. So it's a place where, for example, I just lost my damn thing. So it's a place where, for example, it's easy. We have phenomenal video production capabilities, right? But I'm of the mind that every time we light up a studio, we're inviting an unfavorable comparison to the folks at Univision or the folks at Turner or the folks at NBC, because that's what they do, and they do an amazing job. So I don't want to produce what looks like 1980s UHF television, right? So social is a place where we nail green
I think you may
screen.
have to define UHF.
UHF was channels you've never heard of, right? The point being is
Channel 37.
it looks like the audiovisual club, and even if you do a great job, you're going to struggle to even hit parity.
Right.
So start to work in formats, and this is something again that I think Barstool has done a phenomenal job on. Develop formats, right, that are antithetical to what a linear network wants to do, and social is a phenomenal proving ground for that.
JC and Jeff, any?
You want to go first?
Sure. I think we are at an inflection point, probably more so than we've ever been in media. Let me say this. Content is king. content has been king for a long time, but content is probably more king than it's ever been. There are more distributors and more rights buyers that are going to enter just about every negotiation, and so the value of rights are going to go up. But I think there's going to be a almost like a Darwinian escalation of the tier one rights. So to that end, rights owners, meaning leagues, federations, those who put on the sports, are going to have a decision to make. Do I want to own my data? And by doing that, I build my own owned and operated solution like NFL Game Pass or NBA League Pass or MLB.TV or NHL.TV and so on. Or do I sell those rights to a third party, an aggregator of content? So that could be DAZN or ESPN Plus or Apple TV, Apple Plus, which is now coming out, and Disney Plus, which is now coming out. And there's more and more opportunities for organizations to buy that content and roll it up. But the problem is, when you take that check, you don't get the data. You don't get the personal identifiable information, the PII, which at the core end of the day is what you use to drive real value. At baseball, when Deirdre and I worked there, we were able to tie what you did online to what you did at a ballpark. So we created things that got you free Wi-Fi and allowed you to check in and allowed you to see all kinds of cool things to tie your experience at the game to your experience virtually. So we knew if you were buying hats and t-shirts, we knew if you're watching games, but if, for me, for example, they're seeing over and over again that I'm watching games in New York, but they're not targeting me with Yankee stuff, they're targeting me with Red Sox stuff because they know that in New York I'm watching Boston content. And when I go to games in New York, I'm going when Boston's in town. And so, again, that data allows you to create a multiplier effect, a huge multiplier effect in terms of how you target your audience and generate revenue.
So in terms of our social approach, we made the first 4 years of this process, we didn't do it right. We thought it was a thermometer to listen to people and an allocation. No, we needed to put 10% of our resources there. All of a sudden we realized that we could drive the conversation. So we decided to bring serious pilots in order to drive the conversation and start shifting the social thermometer in our arena to places where we felt more comfortable and were eventually more monetizable for our advertisers. So that's what has happened with social.
We're down to a couple minutes. I wanted to come back to Deirdre for a second because.
Well, I did want to comment because I think what's
go.
really interesting is like we're so different than you guys in terms of your organizations, but like I am so on the opposite side of the spectrum of what Jeff was saying about being on parity with the networks. I mean, we produce lots of video shows right out of our office, and we actually moved to a nice new office that has some studios now, but it used to literally just be like, let's throw some recliners in the middle of the office, throw some screens behind these guys and let them talk. And The Rundown, which is our daily show about sports and pop culture, it is sponsored by lots of premium advertisers because people are tuning in, people are listening, and people are engaged. And it has nothing to do with the lighting, the quality of the production, the set and experience in the studio. It's everything about the influence of our talent and their voice and their willingness to just talk to fans like fans. And that's what's really, it's really the content itself and the conversation and the narrative that has driven the engagement and not the look and the feel and the quality of the production. That said, we are up-leveling our quality of production as we become bigger and broader company. And our slate of weekend programming now around college football and the NFL would indicate that. But it's just interesting, like we're just so willing to just put up a camera and experiment. And I think when something takes hold, we'll start to put more investment behind it. It'll attract sponsors, which inevitably then up levels the production. But we run the full spectrum of like, shot on an iPhone to Barstool Outdoors, which looks like it should be, on the Outdoors network and television. So everything and everything in between. And social media is what has allowed us to emerge as a company. So unlike a big legacy brand like Yahoo has to figure out how do I take my content and put it on social, like we have no choice.
Right.
If we don't put our content on social, then it's on a website that we have to like fight really hard to get people to come to. Versus we put it out on Twitter, we put it out on Instagram, we put it out on Facebook, and our audiences experience our content in those places, and we program our content for those platforms specifically in their formats that work there.
And by the way, nobody does it better. So Barstool has made it work because you're so good at it. The traditional brands that have tried that, it hasn't worked at all. I think it's a matter of fact, what you said. It's the transparent people that speak to fans. That's why that's worked for Barstool so well.
And you've taken a lot of arrows for lots of other reasons, which could be an entire other platform that we can go through. We have
The brand safety
11,
conference is down the hall.
10,
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Last 5-second, what advice would you give to people that are looking to build a career in this space?
There is a new era coming. Jump into it. If you like sports and you like math and you like a big opportunity is coming. The industry
If
is
you
gonna
like
grow.
math, did you just say
Yeah,
if you like math?
math is going to be part of the
Sure.
of the new world. So jump into it because it seemed to be that our business, our industry was very mature. It's going to be completely changed in the next few years. So come and join us.
People entering the industry. I would say the best advice that I have is go focus on something that you're passionate about and get really good at it, and then join the sports industry. Go become a lawyer, an accountant, a statistician, a business development executive, a producer, a writer, an editor, and then join the industry. Many people join the industry from the ground up, and they're just willing to get into a place and make the best thing about the thing that they do, where they work, not what they do. So I guess, in short, my advice would be go really hone a skill. If you can do that in the sports industry, amazing, all the better. Some of us have been very fortunate to do that, but there's a lot of demand, and there aren't that many jobs, so it's sometimes very difficult to break into the industry. And so my advice would be go get really good at something, and then go find the place that you're passionate about to go do that.
I would say, I think it's essential to be great at something, and math is a great thing to be great at. I think the biggest thing is don't get sucked into working for the biggest, most famous brand that's going to sound really cool on your LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
Make a bet, and if you need to, make several bets over the first couple of years of your career in places that have a chance to grow, and you can help them grow, and they can grow with you. Deirdre was talking about Barstool in 2004. Right, I guarantee nobody who went home and told their parents at Thanksgiving they were working for this thing called Barstool had a parade thrown for them, right?
There were a lot of parades in Boston in 04.
But there were.
That's where Barstool got started.
I get you. But my point is,
Couldn't resist.
don't get sucked into, gosh, I want a job at the NFL or the NBA. Go work for a lacrosse league. Go work for an esports team.
PLO.
Exactly. I mean, find a place that you can rock it with.
Yeah, I'd say like never, more than ever, I think the industry is hard to break into. And so the points that everyone has made so far, like be good at something, be passionate about something. And, the day I joined Barstool and changed my LinkedIn to Barstool Sports, I've never experienced anything like it in my career. I've been completely flooded by people trying to have a cup of coffee, send me their resume, get an interview, get a foot in the door. And every once in a while, I'm just like, wow, what that person said really stood out. That's meaningful. I want to meet that person because I think they could contribute here, or I think they could help me do my job better, make me better at my job, which we're all always trying to do. So I think, like, don't just, take it for granted that you know someone or you want to go work somewhere and it's cool. Like, really be a contributor and demonstrate how you can contribute. That's critical, especially in sports, because there's just like so many people that want to work in sports and they don't really know why. And a lot of times in the first 5 minutes of an interview, I think we've all experienced where we're like, oh man, this person doesn't really have anything to contribute other than that they love to talk about baseball or whatever sport that they're passionate about. So
My advice is what they said.
Russ, one more thing I want to throw out there to that point. If you're entering the sports industry or any industry, take every meeting. Use your relationships, use your network, take every meeting, because you never know. I just didn't want that to get lost, because that absolutely is how you find the second level or third level on LinkedIn that you may not have otherwise known about, and that could lead to all sorts of opportunities.
yeah, and take risks, right?
Deirdre.
Jeff made a great point about that.
Jeff, JC, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please join me in
Thank
thanking
you all.